Download this code from codegive.com, link in the description below. Composing event handlers in Nitro, a comprehensive guide. Nitro, the lightweight and performant JavaScript framework for building interactive web applications, emphasizes component-based architecture and efficient event handling. Composing event handlers in Nitro allows you to create modular, reusable, and maintainable code for managing user interactions and other events. This tutorial delves deep into the techniques, best practices, and potential pitfalls of composing event handlers in Nitro, complete with detailed code examples. What is event handler composition? Event handler composition is the practice of combining multiple event handlers into a single, cohesive handler. Instead of attaching separate handlers directly to an element for the same event, you create a composed handler that encapsulates the logic of each individual handler. This approach offers several benefits. Modularity. Individual handlers can be developed and tested independently, promoting code reusability. Maintainability. Changes to one handler don't necessarily affect others, reducing the risk of unintended consequences. Readability. The main handler logic becomes cleaner and easier to understand. Organization. Event handling code is structured and logically separated, improving overall project organization. Flexibility. Handlers can be dynamically added or removed from the composition based on application logic. Key techniques for composing event handlers in Nitro. Nitro doesn't provide a built-in, specific composition API. Instead, you leverage standard JavaScript concepts and Nitro's reactive primitives to achieve the desired composition. Here are the primary techniques. 1. Chaining function calls *. This is the simplest and most straightforward approach. You define individual handler functions and then chain them together in the composed handler. Explanation. Log click, update counter, and prevent default are individual event handler functions. Each performs a specific task. Handle click is the composed handler. It calls each of the individual handlers in sequence. The Nitro component binds handle click to the button's click event. Note that we wrap the handle click function in an arrow function to pass the counter reactive variable. Pros. Easy to understand, simple to implement. Cons. Can become verbose if there are many handlers. Hard to conditionally skip handlers. Tight coupling between handlers. 2. Using a handler array/list and looping *. This method uses an array or list to store the individual handlers. The composed handler then iterates through the array and executes each handler. Explanation. Handlers is an array containing the individual event handler functions. Handle click iterates through the handlers array and calls each function. We handle passing the reactive counter to the update counter function explicitly by checking the function. Pros. More scalable for a large number of handlers. Easier to dynamically add or remove handlers from the list. Cons. Requires iterating over the array, which could have a slight performance impact, usually negligible. Requires managing the array. Needs logic to handle different argument types for the handlers. 3. Using a higher order function, currying. This technique involves creating a higher order function that accepts individual handlers as arguments and returns a new composed handler function. Currying can be used to pre-configure handlers with specific data or dependencies. Explanation. Compose handlers is the higher order function. It takes a variable number of handlers as arguments, handlers. It returns a new function, composed handler, which iterates through the provided handlers and executes them. The if handler.length1 Check determines if the handler expects two arguments, event and counter, and passes them accordingly. This is a simple way to handle different handler signatures. Asterisk the Nitro component calls compose handlers with the individual handler functions, creating the final handle click function. Again, we wrap this in an arrow function to ensure the counter is available in the component template. Asterisk pros asterisk more flexible, can handle different argument types for different handlers. Can be used to create reusable handler compositions. Improves code readability by separating handler definition from handler application. Asterisk cons asterisk slightly more complex to understand than simple chaining. For creating a reusable composable composition API. For more complex applications, create a dedicated composable function to encapsulate the event handler composition logic. This promotes reusability and simplifies your components. Asterisk explanation asterisk. Asterisk use click handler is a composable function that encapsulates the logic for handling click events and managing the counter. Asterisk it defines the individual handlers, the compose handlers function, and creates the handle click function. Asterisk the component imports use click handler and uses its returned values, the counter and handle click function. This keeps the component clean and focuses solely on presentation. Asterisk pros asterisk highly reusable. Promotes separation of concerns. Makes components cleaner and more maintainable. Asterisk cons asterisk requires creating a separate composable file. Adds a layer of abstraction, which might be overkill for simple cases. Important considerations and best practices. Asterisk event propagation asterisk be mindful of event propagation, bubbling and capturing. The order in which your handlers are executed might affect the behavior of other elements on the page. Use event.stop propagation, or event.stop immediate propagation, when necessary to control event propagation. However, use these sparingly and only when truly needed, as they can make your application harder to debug. Asterisk error handling asterisk wrap each handler function in a try-catch block to handle potential errors gracefully. This prevents one handler from crashing the entire event handling chain. Asterisk performance asterisk minimize the complexity of your handlers. Avoid performing expensive calculations or DOM manipulations directly within the handlers. Defer these tasks to asynchronous functions or web workers if possible. Use debouncing or throttling techniques for handlers that are triggered frequently, example scroll events, input events. Asterisk handler ordering asterisk the order in which you compose the handlers can be important. Consider the dependencies between handlers and the desired execution order. For example, you might want to prevent the default behavior of an event before executing other handlers. Asterisk context, this be aware of this context within your handler functions. In many cases, this will refer to the DOM element that triggered the event. Use arrow functions to preserve the components this context when necessary. Asterisk reactive state asterisk when using reactive variables, like ref and reactive in Nitro, ensure you're accessing and modifying them correctly within your handlers. Use the .value property to access the underlying value of a ref. Asterisk separation of concerns asterisk keep your event handlers focused and single purpose. Avoid putting too much logic into a single handler. Instead, decompose complex tasks into smaller, more manageable handlers. Asterisk naming conventions asterisk use clear and descriptive names for your event handlers. This improves code readability and maintainability. Consider prefixes like handle, on, or process to indicate that a function is an event handler. Asterisk testing asterisk write unit tests for your individual event handlers to ensure that they function correctly in isolation. Also, Write integration tests to verify that the composed handlers behave as expected. Code example, using event.prevent default, effectively. Here's an example that demonstrates how to use event.prevent default, strategically within a composed handler. Explanation validate input performs validation and calls event.prevent default, only if the input is invalid. Submit form first validates the input, and only proceeds with submission if the input is valid. The .prevent modifier on the form's @submit event is crucial to initially prevent the browser's default form submission behavior. Event.prevent default, invalidate input provides an additional layer of prevention if the validation fails. Example, handling different event types. This example demonstrates how to compose handlers for different event types using a more generic compose handlers function. Explanation The use event handler composable now allows you to register handlers for specific event types, click, mouse over, etc. Register handler adds handlers to an internal registry for each event type. Compose handler returns a function that, when called, will iterate through the handlers registered for that event type and execute them. In the component, you register the click and mouse over handlers, then use compose handler to get the composed handlers for each, binding them to the button's event listeners. In summary, event handler composition in Nitro, or any JavaScript framework, is a powerful technique for creating modular, maintainable, and reusable event handling logic. By carefully choosing the appropriate composition method and following best practices, you can improve the overall quality and scalability of your web applications. Remember to consider the specific requirements of your application and choose the method that best balances simplicity, flexibility, and performance.